Welcome to the Founders Forum podcast, brought to you by the Foxwell Founders, where we interview some of the hottest minds in D2C right now and deep dive on their area of expertise. Everyone that we interview here is a cherished member of our Foxwell Founders community of over 550 advertisers worldwide and are at the cutting edge of what is working right now. I hope you enjoy this, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Andrew at Foxwell Digital. And now let's get stuck into this week's episode. Here are Edwin and Tris, our hosts.
Three best ways that we've ever seen to deal with this is
it's one of the things that's working really, really well for our agency right now.
Question of the week, right?
He's going to spill all the tea on TikTok for us. What is the oh wow strategy of the moment? If it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Who buys it even at that time, right?
All right, Blake. So the first question, the first thing on my mind, tell me, there's always a little secret sauce, a little oh wow strategy. Tell me, what is the oh wow strategy of the moment that maybe not everybody knows, but you look at it and the results, you're like, wow.
I would actually say what I'm liking right now, and it's not going to improve your ad performance, but just to give you more data, is no, I think it's even better, especially for everyone running accounts. So a place where a lot of people don't navigate to is the experiments tab inside. And usually to run a conversion lift study, like it can be very expensive, but now you're able to run conversion lift studies for a lot less, and they're all self-serve. So if you go to experiments inside Meta, conversion lift study is going to be open to most people that have enough ad spend. And if you're spending more than $50,000 a month, I've seen this be greenlit, and you can get one set up for your whole account and you can run it. It's just going to help you measure incrementality better.
When you say set up, it measures incrementality. Surely, so I'm here sitting as a kind of a junior media buyer going, but I'm just seeing ROAS. I'm seeing good CPA. I'm seeing good ROAS. Why would I need another measurement? Is that just confusing? Why am I using that? Because I've seen them before. I've seen them work. But what are we seeing in these new versions in the experiments tab?
Yeah. So basically, with the conversion lift study, there's a ton of stuff once it's unlocked that you can go in and measure. One of them is incremental ROAS. So it's like if these ads weren't running, how many additional sales did they actually convert in? And so it's like the full picture, and they do that using a holdout group, on some of your ads. So for our larger accounts that have had access to it, it's been very insightful to see, like, this is what our incremental ROAS is, this is how much our incremental cost per purchase is, and it's helped justify increasing spend on the platform. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just, it gives you a view, but it makes you have more confidence in the data as you continue to spend more and as you continue to scale.
Absolutely, yeah. I've seen them before. Brand lift study, conversion lift studies. There's some really cool stuff you can do in the back end. We've had some real close brushes with the measurement team in Meta, and that's one of the gold standards. Now that they're making it available to everyone, that's even better again. Yeah, I haven't done one since post iOS, so it's something to get back on the checklist for sure.
So our listeners understand the question that in my head, and whenever this gets brought up, is sometimes we'll get a brand owner who is like, we would have made that money anyway. Right? Like
all the time.
We've all gone that, right? They're
Crazy.
riding high. They had something go viral a couple times, and then you hit them with your bill, and they're like, why are we paying this? We would have made these sales anyway. You drop the test on them.
Yeah.
You drop the money.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great. I mean, we try to run one like once a quarter. Sometimes not run it during Q4. Just because they do like a holdout. So yeah, it's great. I think like Meta's official verbiage, I'm just pulling it up here. Once it's live in your ad account, you can run a conversion lift test on a campaign that's spent more than $5,000 in the last year. Has to have a minimum of 500 conversions on a 7-day quick basis.
Okay.
That's a very reasonable threshold.
Depending on your CPA, that's not too much money.
Yeah.
No, so I've been seeing these in a lot more accounts so far this year. And so as they just come in and pop up, we just turn them on and get them rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's
so,
and that makes sense.
so you run these conversion lift studies. Tell me, like, what are the positive experiences, and then have you ever had it backfire on you?
Yeah, that part's interesting. So overall, when I'm running them on the account level, it
Yeah.
has been usually positive, right?
Okay.
We're seeing incremental ROAS, we're seeing the incremental ROAS we want to see.
Yeah.
When we ran some more complicated studies, actually shouldn't even say complicated, but ran them on specific campaigns, like, hey, what does it look like when we're doing retargeting? Like, is retargeting incremental, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we've started to find some more data where, like, hey, advertising to our customer list isn't as incremental as we thought it would be. A lot of these purchases are happening anyway, so we shouldn't continue to invest a lot. Those are areas where on the individual campaign basis that we've seen.
Cool.
And like this is exactly in the retargeting section is where people are always going to say they would have bought anyway. Well, here's your proof. Here's your direct proof in seeing that. I mean that's a massive one. So like this again, how does that get served to you? Does it get sent to you in an email or does it get sent like how do we get the results for that? Is it in that tab?
So it's in the tab. There's on the left hand side of the screen, create a test and then view results. You just thumb down to view results, and that's going to give you the results. But when you're creating the test, you can tell Meta you're testing like audiences, budget and bidding, creative, test format, placements, different events, or just measure the total incremental impact of ads. And that's typically what we've been running because you can run it on the entire ad account, right? So if everything in your ad account is live and going, then you're just like, yeah, I mean, you might as well just run it on the entire account. Once you know that there's incrementality on the entire account, that's when you can be like, all right, what's retargeting doing for us? What's ASC doing for us, etc. And now that's rolled out to, just a lot more advertisers. I think it's going to continue to be a pretty effective tool.
Nice. I really like that. That's going to be something I'm straight away going in there tomorrow morning and doing that straight off the bat. So, Blake, I mean, you're obviously working a lot more in the creative space. You're doing, you're building some really cool teams there doing that. Where do you start? Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to creative? When it comes to actually, I'm a brand owner. I've got some creative in there. It's kind of working. Like, where do I start when it comes to like ideation? What's the process I should be going through when I look at this? Is because we've got some listeners here that are looking and hearing everyone saying, creative is the oil. Creative is making things go. Creative is the thing that's going to work. Where do you start? Like, do you need to look at what's working, or do you need to start ideating in new ideas? What would you say?
Yeah, I think typically where we start is with static ads. Like, productions are expensive, right? Hiring creators can be a pain. So we try to prove out different angles or just general themes, right? With creative tests, with static ads first. So run a bunch of statics with different headlines, find what's resonating with people. Like, we have a client, for example, that sells pain creams, and one of the places we start is like running a headline talking about back pain, knee, like elbow pain, hand pain, like what pain is resonating with people. So then we see like, hey, shoulder pain's getting the most engagement, click through, has the best conversion rate from those static ads. Then you can kind of take that information that you learned from the static, and now you could go do a production focused around shoulder pain, right? You already have data showing that it works, then you can just take that and move it into a production or brief a creator on that angle. But typically we try to start with something cheap, which is testing at a static level, and take those learnings and then trying to apply it to a video ad if we're starting from scratch.
If we're going even further. So what I'm hearing you saying is kind of before even making the ads, you got to identify, like, it's kind of a business case, really. It's like, well, why would somebody buy this? What's the pain point? Pain creams are obviously a massive one. It's easy enough, but it's like, where, what makes you different to every other pain cream? Why are people buying it, and then testing those hooks and those. You're not really testing a hook. You're more testing an angle of those different creatives, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the overarching theme for a lot of it.
Absolutely.
So when you go in and like, so you're fleshing out those angles initially, right? but then there are always key questions that you got to ask the client, because if you just ask the client straight, like what are the pain points, they might tell you, one or two, but so sometimes they need a little nudging, right? And so what are the questions that you ask them? So of course you'll ask them, tell me about the pain points explicitly, but what are some of the other questions that you'll ask a client to help sort of pull it out of them?
Typically, we get you're gonna not, I don't think necessarily, unless the team's very, very dialed, get the best answers from probably the brand owner. I think where we try to dig in is we get a lot of briefs from people, and usually the briefs are great, and that's fantastic. But I think where you pull out the key stuff is just going straight to the reviews.
Okay.
Seeing like what people are saying. Because a good example of this is, we were working with a brand and they gave us all their highlight points, which was awesome. But one of the things we found by going through their comments was that a lot of people were using their product as a replacement for gum. So people had like a gum addiction, and that was something, that's never brought up. It's not going to be on the PDPs. It's not going to be in anything, but it's like, okay, people are saying they have an addiction to gum and they're trying to wean themselves off of it with this product. We should explore that more. So I think there's really like gold mining, just reading the comments and seeing what themes keep coming up again. So that's something that we've done a lot of, and I think that's where you can find some golden nuggets to then bring into ads.
I mean, looking at the comments, looking at the reviews, these are some really like good stuff, and like this is exactly where you should be looking. And then, I mean, a lot of the times we'll come, because we've come up with this all the time. Say, for example, with the replacement for gum, you come up with this, and you say to the brand owner, "Hey, we've actually got a really good one here that a lot of people are saying this. Here's all the screenshots. You make a wonderful fancy deck," and the brand owner goes, "Don't really want to be known for that." Like, how do you get over that? That's crushing for a creative, right? They're like, we've got a great idea, and they say no.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can convince them otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But other times it's just going to be is what it is. It all depends on how much the decision makers married to their brand and or the idea of being open to testing new things. A lot of people come to us for creative, so a lot of people are open to new things. As long as it visually looks on brand to them, that's, for the people who are concerned on brand, having it visually meet those expectations is more important than, I think, the messaging overall.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the things I'd say is in answer to that as well is something we do when we start to work with people on a creative basis. We have that discussion up front. Hey, we're not going to like the look of a lot of ads. It's, this is 2024, baby. We're going to find some really, really gnarly looking stuff, and that's the stuff that works. And see, the thing
You're
is,
going to make an ugly ad? Is it going to work? An ugly ad is going to work?
Yes. No, this is the thing, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. People just get out of the way. I mean, you've seen these memes in LinkedIn and everything else of, the surprise that the thing you think when you put it up is like 15% off. And it's like the user's going to be like, "Thank you, brand. I'm so happy." It's not. It's get out of the way. Get out of the way. So, like, we want to make an ugly ad. We want to catch people's attention. But again, a lot of times when you're telling the brand owner you're a replacement for gum, go with it. Use it. Use that as an angle, and get in there, and then people will be using you for the reason you're there for the first place. So it's have a full circle there for sure. In terms of like just looking at so static is one major thing that you're saying you're getting your biggest bang for your buck because it's cheaper in terms of click-through rate. You're getting obviously better conversion rates off it because people aren't sitting there and watching it. That's in platform. When it comes to designing, would you say more images or would you go carousels? Because I say carousels because you can test multiple images at once. There is that kind of a misnomer?
I think it kind of just depends. I think for some products you're going to have better success with statics, or some other products you're going to have really good success with carousels. I think you test them both. I think you can take a concept and have a static, a carousel on it and just see what performs better. I think it's really hard to tell. I mean, in clothing, carousels often win. I find sometimes with like technical products or products that are very art focused, you can have carousels win a lot of the time. But again, I've seen them underperform just as much. So I think it really just depends.
So
Yeah, it makes sense.
going back to originally you were talking about your back the back pain client. And so you're talking about focusing on the pain points to help figure out the image creative. What about brands that are more lifestyle? So you talked about clothing, right? With clothing there's not sort of like a before and after as there is with a performance or a technical product. So with that, what are the questions that you're asking, honing in on when you're doing that first batch with them?
Yeah, clothing would probably be the most difficult, and it's going to depend on whether is it streetwear focused, right? Or is it going to be technical? Because if it's technical, you can almost follow the exact
Yeah.
same thing, right? You
Yeah.
have that exact same pattern. When it's streetwear, honestly, you're more so going for just a vibe. Like, right? It's just that's I don't think there's a lot of like performance there in terms of what you're doing. It's like make pretty ads that speak to the consumer. Like there, don't make ugly ads for that. Make
Okay.
like show the if you're gonna do a shoot, you could show people in like realistic settings, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of time it's carousel and like pretty products for those drops. I mean, it's very stylized. I think but it works though. I mean, that's definitely that industry because it's hard to sell.
Yeah.
Ralph Lauren's selling the brand, not like why this polo is
Yeah.
more functional than others, right?
Yeah.
But this is the thing, right? So this is the question I'd ask. So with an apparel brand, so like, yeah, you can't go in and be like, talk about your t-shirt there. You can't be like, it's super soft and it's going to be easy to iron. Like, I don't care. That's not why I'm buying this. I'm buying this because it looks good. And like, how do you say, because I've seen a lot of D2C brands in my ads at the moment with exactly that. They're going the whole, it's stretchy, it fits and everything else. I'm just going, I'm not interested. Because it's not a brand, like a well-known brand. So you're saying with apparel brands kind of trying to elevate that, it needs to be that elevated feeling?
I think if you're a non-technical apparel brand, yeah, you're kind of more selling your lifestyle and what you're about more than the actual product itself. And I don't think it's very easy to do. But I do think you want to show the clothing in like realistic settings. Not all of it has to be stylized. Like we've seen a lot of, you see a lot more like editorial stuff, or not editorial stuff on like luxury brands. Like people look like they're caught in the moment. It's all fake. But I would say I don't think their last round's that good. But a brand to always look at is Louis Vuitton. They make like just very specific meta ads. Like they're very clearly made for meta for social, and I would look at what they do because I honestly think those are some of the best paid ads I've seen for like fashion accessory brands that are elevated while still showing off the product that still grab your attention. They're extremely good.
And what are
So
they doing
Blake,
differently? Because I love that. Like I love that we're able to like specifically say keep an eye on this brand. Like what is it? Like is it the angle, the lighting? Is there anything in particular like do more of this if you're trying to elevate your brand?
Yeah, it's like so you don't want to have quick cuts, right? We know with like a lot of the stuff we're doing, like 2 second scenes, quick cuts, visually interesting, lots of motions, like that's what works. And Louis Vuitton really has doubled down on that when it comes to their creative. So we saw this a lot with their fall campaign, their new campaign that just dropped. I don't see it as much here, but that was also Pharrell's first campaign, so they're definitely going for a different, unique feel. But a lot of the stuff over the holiday was like really weird, interesting intro, like visual to quick cuts while still showing the product, and it was just very engaging to the viewer. It was honestly some really great ads. Product was still the hero, but they just like they did everything right around the edit of it.
I like that. I remember seeing a Hugo Boss one very similar. I think it wasn't Pharrell, but it was someone similar. I think it might have been will.i.am that was doing it with Hugo Boss, and it was very similar. It was quick, short, sharp edits, but it was showing the quality, but it was also kind of having the almost like I think it was smoke coming across the screen. Again, it was something visually interesting and capturing, and it feels like it goes to that. I want this. The limbic system that they talk about is really goes straight into that. It's not a FOMO, but it's not a you should have this by now because we're immune to that, especially when scrolling on social, right? So it's trying to get that in there. I don't know, Edwin, you work with a lot of apparel brands. What kind of stuff is working from a creative standpoint there?
Vibes.
Vibes.
It's all vibes. I was actually going to ask you, Blake, if you've managed yet to expense a trip to Ibiza so you get the proper vibe.
No, definitely not yet. We tried to work one to Italy last year, but it didn't pan out.
Because so you're saying I work with a lot of apparel brands. I remember we had literally multiple apparel brands who one time we were she was showing me something on a screen, and on the expense board was like a $30,000 bill for a villa in Ibiza, and I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, we shot.
Nice.
She's like, we shot our entire campaign, and then we finished early, and I went down to the Chiringuito for a couple of days.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, that's
She got
so
it.
funny.
She got the vibes. She got it all sorted. So I guess moving on, tell me, you have this wonderful creative department that is not, you didn't start off like that, right? Now you're able to produce these really wild things. For agency owners that are looking to get more into creative and building out that side, what do you recommend, and what mistakes did you make at the beginning?
Yeah, so I have the benefit of having a co-founder that comes from shooting large commercials. So his
Okay.
last job he's shooting from like Honda, Patron, like really large productions. So he brought like the large wealth of experience over to advisory to help build out the creative department into what it is today. I
Okay.
think there's behind me is a 5,000 square foot studio, right? So
Whoa.
it's very big. We have a lot of equipment. We have a lot of lighting. We've got like a very, very large scale kind of production studio where we can shoot a lot. And really,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things is if you're trying to get into creative and shoot like higher end productions, things that aren't necessarily like farming out UGC to creators,
Yeah.
it really helps to have your own space because that's where you're able to shoot quickly and it's more efficient, right? A lot of times
Yeah.
when people are starting out, you rent space and that's fine. But what it does is it really eats into your margins
Okay.
because renting space is very expensive. So the first thing I would try to do is to wherever you have an open spot is to, even if it's small, like try to start building your in-house studio to start getting used to shooting content wherever you are, because it's always going to be more efficient and you are able to have more leeway if you make mistakes, because sometimes things need to be reshot and you can't go and re-rent another studio again, right? Because it's going to kill your margins. So having an area, and it doesn't have to be large, where you can continuously shoot and have a setup is definitely ideal.
That's a good one. I like
So
that.
then going back, so then you mentioned, farming out UGCs and then doing like very high performance, very polished shoots. Which one are you seeing perform better for you at the moment? Obviously, you do very high end shoots, but like UGC stuff, like answer the question, like the question we all wonder, like polished, not polished. Tell me what are you seeing?
I think they both can work. I think you see unpolished work better. I mean, it's just more native to the platform. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, I think it's kind of like a mute point because we're getting to the point now where UGC and unpolished is looking very strong. Like some of these creators have studio setups or have setups that are very close to what you could potentially find in a production studio. I don't think I think the delivery matters the most out of anything. I think it's how the ad is cut, how much like passion the actor is bringing, right? I really think that it's all everything that goes into it is what makes a difference, not necessarily like UGC, like we call it hi-fi, lo-fi, user-generated content, actor-generated content. I think it's if you have a solid script and a solid story, that's what's ultimately going to hook people in, more so than anything else. Like it, and I think as we get into this year and next year, the biggest thing is like audience liquidity, right? You want a lot of different types of styles of creative in your ad account to appeal to different people. You keep putting out lo-fi content after lo-fi content after lo-fi content, you're going to keep hitting the same people, especially if it's the same script, same angle, same hooks. Like having a wide variety of different content's going to help you branch out to who you're getting in front of and who you're appealing to.
And then you test them. Then back on what you're saying there, you test them on the statics and see which ones are working. So are you taking statics while you're shooting video, or are you taking the screenshots from the videos? How are you taking the statics?
Yeah, we don't take like screenshots from the videos because everything's it's too complicated, and you can't do it. Like the video footage is clean. We don't often do it. Usually we're working with existing assets, and or we do a lot of photo as well. So sometimes people book photo productions with us as well, photo shoots. So we'll take that, but we just try to, since the productions are expensive and or just time consuming to get creative, we do really try to prove out some rough form of a concept beforehand, just with general static ads with existing content. Be like, hey, this works. Now let's go script this out and let's see like what type of style is going to work best.
Yeah. And so what you're doing with you're scripting this out. You're finding out what works. You're doing a couple of things, and then you're going shooting those, testing those for almost like a shot list when you go and do the videos.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I think when also like shooting video, especially with a client, is we put together like a really extensive brief and shot list, and we try to minimize almost every single variable. So all the props that are going to be used, like anything that's going to be in the video is approved beforehand. So by the time it's shot, like you literally know, client knows every single prop that's in the video. They know every single scene. It's like all approved beforehand, because a lot of times it's very difficult to go reshoot, especially with setting up lighting. That takes extremely long time. So we try to just map everything out to the smallest detail, and then we go for it. So we'll have a list of like, here are the weird intros that we want to get, like that are visual intros. Here are the hooks that are going to go along with them. And then we go shoot what we call like the core of the video. And sometimes the core there's two different ones. Maybe there's one depending upon that. So you have the intros and you have the core. And that's what we use to then go and start testing the video in market.
Yeah. Making magic, I'd say is probably where the and so again it's kind of creative iteration. Like this is the question we often have with a lot of the spend that we're putting behind it, because I love this idea of testing a little bit, finding what it is, getting the list, and going before you start going and making that big commitment. How far down the rabbit hole do you go? How, when you start seeing this creative is starting to work, do you start iterating again on that versus going in a whole new direction?
It kind of just depends on how well it's potentially working. It really depends on the data. So like, we shoot a higher production piece, we see it's got low hook rates or something, we will go and like take hooks from other videos, slice it, put it in front, mess with what we have just to get that up, because hook rate can increase click-through rate, and that can help performance. So we'll kind of start there to see how we can make the most of it and get it to a place. And then we'll also swap out scenes. There's a lot of different cutting up of the videos we do to try to get them to a place once they work. But you do hit a certain point where it's like, all right, this is the best it's going to be. After probably 4 rounds of iteration, you're probably pretty close to it. You maybe start testing copy on it at that point to how successful we know that piece is going to be. And then it's like, all right, what did we learn from this? What worked? What didn't? What do we go do next? And that's where we go and revisit like hey, how did some of these other headlines do? I mean, we're kind of always testing stacks in the background with different
Yeah.
angles, so we can then just pull from this library and do it. Or what didn't work about this ad? Was it the actor? Was it the actress? Do we go and shoot with a different type of person? Do we switch the gender? Those are all things that
Yeah.
that we pull in as well.
That's super
So,
interesting.
so you mentioned the biggest driver, right? So you're able to do all this production,
did
but
it.
your biggest driver is still the scripting and the story, right? And so tell
Yeah.
me your process around that, because then like tell me the secret sauce around that.
Yeah, so this one's really collaborative. Like we
Okay.
will a lot of times we write all of the scripts, but it also has to be buy-in from the client on what we're doing as well. So it's definitely like we're coming into it and we're going to write a script that we think is like speaks best to deliver the message that we want it to, and then the client usually comes in and tweaks that. But this is where we get back to reading reviews, because we try to put together like a just a holistic view of what this product is and what the company is before we write the script. So we're outlining key reviews, words people say that might just be related to this industry that you don't find in any other industries, like right, like the weightlifting community talks a certain way, Star Wars community talks a certain way. There's always buzzwords in every single different like community of people. So it's looking for those buzzwords and incorporating that into the script, finding phrases that's repeatedly used in reviews, and incorporating those into the script as well, and then making sure you do touch upon like the unique selling points of the product. Why is it so different than the others? Why should people try this? That's kind of the area where we start at, and then there's always going to be some emotional involvement when you're writing these scripts in terms of like what emotion is the person giving out, or is this person serious because they're authoritative, or is this person more like the somewhat comical everyday guy, right? Or everyday woodsman or whatever. So you need to then incorporate the elements of the emotion you're trying to give off and the personality that that person has
Yeah.
into it, because we work with a lot of actors, and some actors, like we have one guy who he does a lot of our comical stuff, and we like working with him a lot. But you can also see him being really serious in pharmaceutical commercials on TV. So
Got a good range.
He's got a good range, and it's finding people that can communicate and like match different styles is very important part of the process, right? Bad talent can ruin a good script. And so that's something that I think we all probably know. And it's something to be aware of, because on camera, you've got to exaggerate, right? Everything needs to be bigger than life, and you need to bring it.
Yeah.
And while some people think they're good on camera, they're actually not. So it's making sure you can vet that out and all of that.
Yeah, especially when you got rented space, or if you're wasting time on it, you've got to make sure this person's pretty good on the other end. Just peeling it back a bit. I mean, we've got a lot of listeners who will be working with creative agencies. The age old question is: do I work with an agency? Do I have a creative department in house? At what stage do you see that brands should probably have the creative in house, or even like how do they start getting creative so that they can get to a point they're like, okay, I need to pass this to an agency now? So maybe to answer the first question, the first question is how do they go from like, okay, I'm doing a bit this myself, I need an agency involved.
So our largest client does about like a couple billion a year, right? And
Nice.
we have clients all the way down from that. I don't know anyone that fully does creative in house. Like creative is always something that multiple people are having inputs on. Like we have this one client, they're about 60 million a year, and we do their media buying for them, and they have 5 different creative partners, including us, right? And so they have an in-house team that's really good. In-house team shoots their product amazing, and they have a really good style, and they crush it. They've got a huge studio. It's actually, and like they do great, like extremely talented creative director over there. But they want other styles, they want other opinions, they want other things. So they all go and they all outsource it. I mean, all these big companies outsource creative production at some level. Like Louis Vuitton's hiring an agency, right? Like
Yeah,
Louis
sure.
Vuitton does stuff in house, but
For
they
sure.
also hire agencies. Creative is often outsourced and it's often a mix. And like when we work with companies, we tell them like, we have monthly creative packages, creative retainers. We're also don't think we should be your only content source, right? Like you should have other sources of content coming in, even if it's just in house. It's good to have a wide variety of different types of content.
So
And
let's
like that's really like, I mean, you say wide variety. They're testing those against each other. Are they pitting you against other brands in terms of your performance, or are them at their own?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times, like it kind of depends, but it's either we're getting pit against each other to try to make better ads, and or we're just shooting a very specific style, right? And it's like even if yours fails, like they come back. Like we keep iterating, right? You don't win you don't hit a home run every time, but
Yeah.
you keep iterating on it. And the other interesting thing is like sometimes like we'll just shoot one style for some brands, like brands know, hey, advisory does X style extremely well for us, so we go to them to do that. Like we do a lot of brand stories. We're pretty good at it. We've done it for a lot of different brands, so we have a lot of brands that just come to us to do their brand story piece.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just depends, but
Yeah.
So let's talk about. So you mentioned creative packages. So a lot of people they have trouble around pricing, right? A lot of agency heads have trouble around pricing. So let's talk about on the higher end stuff to the moon it can go. But let's talk about UGC stuff, more like stuff that gets churned out day to day. What is the general range that you're seeing with packages on that end, so that our listeners can have sort of like a benchmark? What's the range that
yeah.
you're seeing?
So I think we don't actually do like any type of UGC outsourcing, right? Everything for us is done in house. So we write the script, hire the actor, bring them in or
Okay.
bring them to a location and shoot. So
Okay.
we're never like subbing it out to giving a creator a script and letting them shoot. So with our pricing, like depending upon what needs to be done, it's usually somewhere between like 5K starting, I would say, for a
Okay.
day of production.
Okay.
And the assets you get out of that can really range depending upon the concept, uh, in talent fees and a lot of that. So it's kind of a mixed price. But what I've been seeing is really interesting pricing with brands I work with when they're sourcing UGC, like Mini Social. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they're kind of like you can get really good creative there for like $50 for like a UGC creator, right? And it's kind of crazy. Like there's more and more systems that have you're selling a commodity almost at that point, right? And
Yeah.
they have a really good systemized process down, and you can get lucky and get really good content there. So like I've seen pricing like just range. Like I paid one creator $750 one time for a video to make, to just help a client out. I knew her; she's $750 for 3 videos. Great content. We've done the Mini Social route with people. It was $200. We got like 5 videos or something, and they were all really good and they did well. So that part of the market, I feel like prices really fluctuate and it's different. But yeah, that pricing there is hard.
How does AI fit into all that? Because that, I mean, they're doing that, obviously paying people per like small video, and it works, right? That model works. People, I was going to ask, that was my next question to you, was, how like volume. People wants to know, like, if I'm a brand, I'm spending 10 grand a month. I need some creative that's really good. Like, if I'm going to pay you 5K like for a thing. Like, how many videos do I get? And I get it. It's not like that, but like, what you get for 5K? Because, I mean, if it works, you've got plenty of clients. You're growing like mad, so it must be working. So what am I getting for 5K that I'm not getting, that the Mini Social is not giving you?
Yeah, it does just depend. You're getting about like somewhere between 15 to 25 assets probably on average, so different videos. And it's just what you're getting is something that's higher quality produced, quality control, an approved script and everything that goes into it to seem on brand as possible, right? Nothing in there is going to be off brand. It's going to represent your brand in the best light possible, and it's going to be something that you've approved and had pretty much full control over. So, and it's made with data that we've been taking to make an informed shoe instead of kind of just shooting at the hip. And hopefully it performs, right? Like that's the ultimate goal, and we'll edit it and cut it up and make adjustments to it to try to get to be the best place possible. And most of the stuff we strive for, it's like we want this to, yeah, we want it to be an ad, but if you need to put it on your website, if you want to have it on a landing page, there are pieces that can live in other situations as well.
Yeah,
they can work on YouTube, they can work on connected TV. So
nice. I like that. Yeah, and look, that's exactly. I mean, this is the thing. So many people kind of look at it in ignorant people like myself. I'll admit that I've looked at it in the past, gone, I can get the same thing from these guys. Completely get it now. Completely get it. It makes a lot more sense. And this is the question I was having there with regard to, if I'm a brand and I'm spending $5,000 a month, like when do I need to start going to someone like Mini Social rather than shooting myself? Like what would be your advice to get people kind of on that ladder to get moving and start finding the right creative?
Yeah, I think you need both, right? Like you need to do the Mini Social and source stuff from UGC creators. You want to have higher production quality content. We've got brands that are just launching, have zero in revenue, or are coming to us and getting shoots done, right? We've got brands that we've done shoots for brands that are doing like $20,000 a month in revenue, but they want the higher quality content because they're going to use it other places. And they also are trying to convey a certain message, and they can really only do that in a controlled environment, right? Like there's very few things there's some things you just can't recreate unless you're having a full-blown production done for it.
Yeah.
And we try to make those. And our whole thing is do things for as efficiently as possible. That's always what we want to start at. Don't do a shoot unless you absolutely have to. So that's why we start with static. So we start getting data. And once we have the data, then we feel comfortable. Then we feel comfortable going to recommend a shoot. Like, hey, this is what we see working. We're seeing these different types. We think like if we want to go shoot something, this is like a style. For our media buying clients, we put out a bunch of different concepts. Like every other week, we come to them with a bunch of different concepts, and we pretty much say the same thing every time. You guys can go find someone that can make this, or we can do it ourselves, whatever you want, right? Yeah. And sometimes we know certain people on their team, they have other creative agencies like, yo, go tell X to make this because they're really good at this. Like they're better than us at this. Or it's like, hey, we want to do this. We know we're good at it. We can do it if you want. And a lot of times, we'll make it. So it's all about just putting out the creative ideas and, letting the client decide where they want it to get made.
Absolutely love that, man. I love that. Edwin, have you got more questions that you're specifically burning with?
So I did a little research before we jumped on, and I was lurking on your Twitter, and I saw that you had a message one time that you were saying how you were thankful for the Foxwell founder group, and so you were feeling thankful for it. And so tell me, like, you've been like you have a lot of experience at this point. You work with a lot of big people. And so what value has it been able to give you, or like what comfort, or like what has it been able to give you to make you feel thankful? Because that's a big thing to say in public, right? Like it's a big thing.
I think it's a space where you can it's a safe space. And I kind of hate to use that term, but it is actually like a space where you can go and ask questions and get feedback without like getting blasted by random people on Twitter who are going to take what you're saying out of context and stuff. Like being a media buyer, running an agency, all of that can be lonely, especially if you don't have other people in the industry to connect with. And it's like, 100%. I can go connect in a private group, right, with these people and like bounce ideas, talk about concerns, whatever. And everyone's nice. No one hates on each other. And if there's debates in there, they're always like healthy. Everyone's trying to help each other like improve because it's just us. No one's trying to sell anyone. And I feel like on other platforms, especially on Twitter, there's debates going on and everyone's trying to push a method or an ideology that's ultimately selling their services. And it's that part's frustrating. So the Foxwell community is great to have because you don't have that just pure knowledge exchange. It's like what Twitter was in the early days and what Facebook groups were in the early days. And now it's overrun, and Foxwell's got a great place where we can just come together and actually learn.
Yeah, and this is it, right? It's not just people it's not people like pushing their product, but it's also kind of people trying to solve problems for each other as well. It's like, hey, I've got that problem, or I've seen this, or is Facebook a conversion down? It's amazing. There's been groups like this in the past, but nothing as quite as I suppose engaging. I've found for sure that like it's when you put a question in there, you're getting an answer within a couple of minutes. So it's really helpful like that for sure. So that's all we had time for, folks. Thanks so much for spending your time with us. Thanks, Blake, for giving us so much fire. That is incredible. Some seriously good stuff there. And listen, talk to you guys next week. Thanks a million for everything.
See you guys.
Thank you. See ya.